Hello, listeners. If you are new here, you can find the recap in the description. And now our story continues. Sophie sat there, her eyes fixed on the door, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The news she had heard on the radio echoed in her head. She felt paralysed, but the opportunity to escape was too tempting. Oh, F it, she thought. Summoning all her courage, she reached out and gently pushed the door open. The sunlight poured in, and she carefully stepped out, her bare feet touching the gravel, making her wish she had her shoes. As the gravel bit into Sophie's bare feet, she moved quietly away from the van. Once she thought she was far enough away, she broke into a run, the rough terrain making each step a challenge. The occasional buzz of insects added to the symphony of nature, and the chirping of birds in the distance reminded her of the world beyond her confinement. The sun was high in the sky, casting a harsh light across the landscape. As Sophie ran through the field, her eyes were drawn to a rutted path that cut across the landscape. The deep grooves in the earth told the story of countless vehicles that had driven this way. The path was narrow, bordered by tall, wild grass that swayed gently in the breeze. The ruts were filled with loose gravel and dirt, making the terrain uneven and challenging to navigate. With each step, Sophie could feel the roughness underfoot, the gravel biting into her bare feet. As she continued along the winding trail, it would sometimes disappear into the tall grass, only to re-emerge further along, guiding her through the field. The ground was still muddy and slippery from the recent rain, making her journey even more arduous. Despite not knowing where she was going, Sophie pressed on. Sophie ran until her lungs hurt, the adrenaline that had fueled her initial escape wearing off and leaving her exhausted. She alternated between running and walking, her eyes constantly scanning for any sign of the van. The grass was lush and green, swaying gently in the breeze, and the wind was cool against her skin, providing a welcome relief from the stifling darkness of the van. Eventually, she stumbled upon an old road, its pavement cracked and crumbling with age. Weeds and grass had begun to reclaim the asphalt, growing through the fissures and adding to the sense of abandonment. The road stretched out before her, an old relic, offering a glimmer of hope that it might lead her to safety. As she continued down the old road, Sophie rounded a corner and saw a gas station in the distance. The small, broken-down establishment stood on the side of the deserted road, its exterior weathered and worn, with peeling paint and a faded sign. The sight of the gas station filled her with a mix of hope and apprehension. She quickened her pace, her bare feet aching with every step, but the promise of potential help spurred her on. Suddenly, Sophie felt a sharp pain in her foot. She had stepped on something. The pain was intense, and she realised she had cut her foot deeply. Blood was pouring from the wound. "Shit! Shit! Shit!" she yelled out. She paused for a moment, lifting her foot to inspect the injury. The cut was deep and the blood was flowing steadily. She knew she needed to find something to stop the bleeding, but she couldn't stay out on the road long. Despite the pain, Sophie kept moving, slower now as each step sent a jolt of agony through her body. When she finally reached the gas station, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape. Sophie took a moment to catch her breath, her bare feet aching. The inside of the gas station was poorly lit, with ancient shelves scattered around, holding a sparse assortment of items. As she limped inside, her eyes scanned the dimly lit room for anything that could help her injured foot. Then, she heard a noise behind her. Turning slowly, she saw a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a man, but he looked far from human. His skin was a sickly grey, and his body was covered in bruises. His limbs were longer than normal, and his hair was falling out in clumps. Drool dripped from his open mouth, and his joints moved in strange, unnatural ways. He didn't speak. Instead, he made terrible, guttural noises that sent chills down Sophie's spine. The man moved closer, his eyes fixed on her with an eerie focus. Sophie tried to back away, but her injured foot made it difficult to move quickly. The man moved slowly, appearing more monstrous than human. Sophie panicked as she faced the terrifying figure. Desperately, she looked around for something to defend herself with. Her eyes landed on a heavy wrench lying on a nearby shelf. She grabbed it, holding it tightly in her trembling hands. The man continued to advance, his eyes never leaving her. Sophie tried to stay calm and find a way to escape, but the pain in her foot and the thing coming at her made it difficult to think clearly. The man let out another terrible noise, and Sophie could see the madness in its eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She knew she couldn't run, but she could fight. With all her strength, she swung the wrench at the creature, hoping to buy herself some time. Thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please like and subscribe.